What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode. So if you guys remember from over a year ago, I made a video about how I changed out the timing chain on my Honda engine. So this thing had a little bit over 200,000 kilometers when I did the service, and it's been over a year and a half now. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is because I actually came across a problem with this setup that I ran. So instead of buying OEM parts from Honda to replace my timing chain and the components, I bought an aftermarket kit with an OEM VTC gear. I have a weird noise when it's at idle. Listen to this. So I thought to myself, and I figured, well, maybe it's because I haven't given the cylinder head a valve adjustment since owning this thing. So I used a couple feeler gauges. I put this in between each one of the valves that are inside of there and the rockers, and I re-gapped them so that both the intake and the exhaust rockers are properly set to the spec that they're supposed to be at. I put everything back together and I figured, okay, well, it should be fixed, it should be good to go now. Well, I was wrong. With both the valve cover and the timing cover removed from the engine, I was able to inspect everything and I found out what my problem is. So I can take a look right here and inspect my timing chain, both the VTC and the exhaust sprockets. I can take a look at all the guides, both the rear one that's adjustable, the front one that's stationary, and the other one that would have been found right there, which I removed and have it somewhere. It's right over here. But that on its own wasn't the issue. This here was my problem. The tensioner that I have wasn't exactly putting enough pressure on the chain, and because of that, it skipped tooth. This little tensioner has one purpose, and that purpose is to keep the timing chain pressed up right against all three of those cogs, both the upper camshafts and the crankshaft cogs. If the chain skips on each of those cogs, you could untime the engine and you could potentially have catastrophic engine failure. On the tops of each of the cogs, there's going to be a little dot that has to correspond up to the two gold teeth. So this one here is for the intake cam, and the exhaust cam is found on the back, and that same dot can be found up top. So if the teeth themselves don't align up with those gold dots on the chain, the camshafts will be out of time with everything else, and the valves here can kiss a piston. At that point, your engine's pooched. For the sake of this video, I'm going to be using a bicycle to show you how the chain on here is no different than on a car. So if you're turning the pedal, the chain right here is going to be turning the gear found on this side. Now, I know that cars don't have multiple gears, but let's say that this here is the cam cog. If this here, for whatever reason, loses its tension and you have slack, it's not going to operate as it should. And the chain itself can jump off of the tooth, and it can also jump from it and just spin off of the cog. So if this tensioner right here is faulty, that means that you're going to have an issue. Now, it's not so bad of a problem on a bicycle because it doesn't really make a difference. There's not any kind of interference with this. However, on a car, it's a totally different story. If this chain were to jump timing off of the cog, that would not be a great time. So that's why instead of installing the old aftermarket parts back onto the engine, I'm going to be replacing both the upper guide here with a genuine Honda part. I'm going to be installing that over here on top. And I'm also going to be replacing the tensioner that we had inside the engine, which is an aftermarket faulty unit, with an OEM proper one that isn't going to give us problems. Now, I am going to be doing a full motor swap. So this K24 isn't going to be staying in my engine bay for too long of a time because I have two more that I'm working on. But I still need some way to get my car to go from A to B, considering this is my daily. Now, the Mini over there, that's another issue on its own. But as for now, that's what I'm going to be doing to fix this problem. I hope you guys don't ever have to run into the same issue, but it's stupid because I ended up spending more than what the original part cost me because I had to buy the cheaper aftermarket component. Once that broke, I had to swap it out with this one here, and I had to basically do this job twice. So I'm doing the entire timing chain guide, I'm retiming everything, I'm resealing everything back up, and I'm replacing parts twice. So this actually cost me more in the long run. But this piece here, there's a little pin inside of it. This is the tensioner from Honda. So with the little pin that's inside of there, that is preventing the arm of the tensioner to come out. Now, once you take that out, it will spring out, kind of like this one here. Now, there are a couple differences between this aftermarket unit and the OEM genuine Honda piece. So not only is there a lot more detail on here, it says what engine it's for, the R40, which is this generation K24. Not only that, if you take a look at this one here, this is made out of steel. This is the aftermarket one. And this one that's from Honda is made out of aluminum. And it just looks nicer. Once you hold both pieces, this is heavier, but this feels like it's a better unit. So what I'm going to be doing is using the 2 bolts that we removed once we took out the old tensioner, and then reinstall everything. The torque specs are going to be down in the description box if you guys want them. So for a quick once over of how to time everything, that top arrow and the dot that's on the cog goes in between the 2 gold teeth on both cams. So there's one here and one of them there. Now on the bottom side of the engine towards the crankshaft, this gold tooth here has to go right in between that tooth right there that has the little dot on it. So once this is on there, it's going to be just like that. Now you cannot have it so that it's one tooth over, because that means your timing is going to be off. You need it so that this tooth is on it like that. Once that's in that position, you can go back up to the top of the engine bay and install the upper timing chain guide after all the other guides are in place. So there's going to be 2 bolts here that go to the top side of the head. These are both 12 mils. You're going to torque both of these up to 16 foot-pounds. Once you have both of those torqued up, you can then install the new tensioner that we have right here. Because I'm going to be doing another engine build for this car, I'm going to have that extra engine out of the vehicle. So if you guys want to see any of these parts here done in more depth, let's say with a better shot, I'll be able to do that because the engine's going to be out of the vehicle. If there's anything you guys want to see in particular, let me know in the comment section now, so that when it comes to actually building that engine, I'll know exactly what you guys want to see. But next up comes installing the tensioner. So the tensioner is pretty easy. You would install this bottom bolt first. It's a 10 mil. Once that's in place, twist it up, install the other 10 mil, and then once those are both torqued up to 9 foot-pounds, you're then going to go ahead and pull that pin. As soon as you pull the pin, you're going to put tension on all the timing components, so make sure that before you pull it, all the teeth that are gold are on the proper dots on both the cam and the crankshaft. So as soon as you pull that pin way down there, everything is going to get tightened up. Because you can see right now, there's still a little bit of slack in the timing chain. So whenever you're ready, after you double check all the dots are where they're supposed to be, both for the cam and the crank, you can pull the pin. For an added measure, grab your old crank bolt, thread it down into the crank, then with a breaker bar, a couple extensions, and a 19 mil, attach it up to the crank pulley, and when you turn it, you'll be able to turn the timing chain, the crank, and the cams, and everything should operate as it should. Now, I would do a full rotation of the crankshaft twice, just to double check to make sure that all the valve train components, all the timing stuff, and everything is where it's supposed to be. So if you move this a little bit more, you'll be able to see the dot in between both of the 2 gold teeth right here. And there's a little arrow right there showing you that same spot. So do a full rotation of the crankshaft twice. Once that's good to go, you can then put everything back on the car. Now for my timing cover, what I'm going to be doing is, well, I cleaned up everything. You can see there's no more RTV, no Honda bond, no nothing all over it. Now, if I wasn't going to be worrying about this engine, and I knew that this is the engine that's going to be staying in the car for a long time, what I would do is I would replace the front main seal here while I had this off. Now, I'm not going to be doing that only because I know this is coming off and I'm not really worried about a huge oil leak, but you should then also use Honda bond to seal everything up, or any other kind of gasket maker that does the same kind of job. Now, let me show you this product here. This is a Permatex Ultra Black Sealant. This is a chemical resistant, a product made for engines, and this will do the trick. If you guys want to coat the entire perimeter of this, along with the bottom and the other side, you're going to coat this stuff on that, along with every single one of these flat areas here, here, and around this perimeter here. Now, you don't need too much, you just need enough to coat it, because as soon as you squish it down by installing each one of these bolts on, it will squish out of the sides and you're going to get a proper seal. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to reinstall everything back into the car, and then once I have it good to go, I'll turn it on and I'll show you how good it sounds. So everything's all back together, everything's looking good. Timing cover's on, valve cover's on, serpentine belt's back on, and everything's looking good. Now, I'm not going to be starting the car up right now, only because the gasket that we have that's in between the timing cover and the actual engine, that gasket needs to dry up before I can get it started. So I'm gonna let the car sit overnight. I'm gonna hopefully let it cure. Come tomorrow, we're gonna turn this on, and hopefully everything works as it should. So she's running. I got 3 knocks when I initially started up the car, and I also have a check engine light. So I'm actually gonna go through here and find out what those codes are, because if I can find out what they are and fix it, I can go through it and figure out if it's an issue or not. Now, there's a couple different ways to actually go ahead and take a look at the codes that you have. In the next video, I'm gonna show you how to actually tackle this, how to address this, how to see if it's a problem or not, and if it's an issue, how to tackle it. So everything's looking good so far. I'm still working on warming this car up, so I'm not gonna be pushing on it more, but from the looks of it, the valve adjustment and that new piece, which is the timing chain tensioner, those solved my problem. So everything's running good. I just turned the car off and turned it back on, and you can see that the knock count is at 0. It doesn't sound funny at idle, it's driving fine. And I'm just gonna let this warm up, and then once I do that, I'm gonna push the car a little bit to see if everything works as it should once I redline the car. Everything's looking good so far, so I can't see why we would have a problem. Yeah, feels good. So this is my grade test to see if everything's working properly. Okay, ready? Watch the tech. Yep, Honda works. It's been a week since I changed out the new tensioner and that upper guide, and I have had no problems since. My knot count has been staying at 0, the engine sounds great, everything's running smoothly, I have more power now because everything's timed correctly. I couldn't be happier with it. Now, I know it's kind of shitty that I've already done this and I've, well, fixed my problem, but if you guys ever have to change out, let's say, any internals to your car, consider buying the OEM parts instead of aftermarket cheap things just trying to save yourself a buck, because it cost me more in the long run because I had to buy the OEM part and the cheap part, and I had to do the work twice. So it's up to you. If you guys are getting rid of your car and you don't really care about it, okay, maybe save yourself a couple bucks, but if it's your daily, I wouldn't cheap out on this kind of stuff. Lesson learned. If you guys have any questions regarding the video, check the description box because I do put a decent amount of information in there. If you guys aren't following me on Instagram, definitely do it. It's at milanmast. If you have any further questions, comment section's down there. You guys know what to do. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.